So welcome to everyone. Again, we are journeying into a new nugget of wisdom tonight, which this time is on failure. So hello, everyone. Welcome, Lee, Connie, Vince. Everyone is joining, Renelle, and we are recording this. So just letting you know that. Yes, tonight we are headed into this new nugget of wisdom, which is slightly different than a pearl of wisdom. It's actually quite different than a pearl of wisdom. And Mynoo will explain the difference. Tonight is about failure. And I know most of us have experienced what we consider failure. Mynoo will share the 7 facts of failure and how to leverage these to accomplish unprecedented success and fulfillment. So that's just a new and exciting and unique way of looking at it. Very excited that you're all here with us. I know during the holidays it gets tricky. There's so many things pulling at us, so many events. And we're just so grateful that you were able to come and join us tonight. So really good to see everyone. Renelle, you look like you're in a dark room with red light on. So for those of you who are on Facebook Live, the good news is if you missed something, you can just watch this over and over again. It is a lot to digest at times, so have your pen and paper handy. And even those of you who are watching on Zoom, you can head over to my Facebook and rewatch this if you need to. We've got all of our pearls of wisdom and our nuggets of wisdom on there. So don't worry if you missed something. I know I have to listen to the recordings more than once usually to get it all. So thank you all for joining us tonight for our nugget of wisdom. Tonight is on failure. And we will get up close and personal with Mynoo Maryel as she shares the 7 facts to failure. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mynoo. It's so nice to see you, Mynoo. I think you're over in Dubai.
Yes, I am. I am in Dubai. Just a second. I have something that I need to see on the screen, and I keep seeming to lose it. Okay. Yes, I'm in Dubai, and yes, festive feel is, the vibe is in, so it's quite lovely to experience all of that. And you were asking, Catherine, to clarify the difference between the pearl of wisdom and nugget of wisdom. So a pearl of wisdom, there are 108 pearls of wisdom, and each pearl is such that by itself, if you focus on that, it can enable you to play your part in creating a world that works for everyone, and clearly it works for you too. A nugget of wisdom is just dense in new insights that you can utilize in the way you choose. You know, it's like a series of revelations, light bulb moments that you have. The value you get from it is when you implement it. So that's the difference. It's dense in insights, and the other one creates a world that works for everyone. So shall we begin? You're muted.
I have everyone coming in on the back end, and yes, so excited to hear you share this new vantage point on failure.
Great. I'm looking forward to sharing it with all of you. So here we go. Yes, it's like I shared, it's time to get up close and personal with failure. I mean, I used to be one of those people for whom failure was like, it was not an option. That sort of attitude. So as a result, if anything that felt like it was going to be, I would be labeled as failure, or it would be labeled as failure, that something that I was involved in, I would really go out of my way to ensure that that didn't happen. And if it did happen, it was a tough situation to deal with. And of course, we deal with situations and move forward. But it basically meant that sometimes many years would go by with that undertone of the aftermath that I had created such a huge amount of meaning around. And I'm sure that prevented me from taking action or moving forward with many other opportunities that otherwise I would have done, just because somehow there was some aspect in there that was associated with my experience of what I called as failure. So part of me was not that enthusiastic about, this old part of me would not have been enthusiastic about getting up close and personal with failure, because it was like, I've been there, don't want to go there again. And yet in this new incarnation, I approached it with great curiosity. So yes, it does. Let's go through the 7 facts about failure. And it has transformed my relationship with failure completely. So the first fact is fast forward. Fast forward failure, sounds such a contradictory piece. Really what failure does is it allows you to weed out that which isn't going to deliver what it is that your intention is set on. And you could spend, many, many hours, days, even years experimenting and not quite going all the way, just in case you failed, and actually delay the fulfillment of the intention that you had created in the first place. But when you declare an intention and you just allow yourself to go all the way, doing what you believe is necessary, remaining stationed in facts and not getting caught up in the implosion of meanings that you might give to the facts. Just observe it from a factual point of view and have another go if that's necessary. Again, if it doesn't deliver, rather than give the meaning of failure and it's like, oh my God, I mustn't go there again, remain stationed in facts, and it enables you to fast forward your way to realizing your intention. What slows you down? How do you leverage this fast forward piece is to keep your finger on the pulse on what are the facts as opposed to the meaning. What it also does is it allows you to discern very powerfully where your action went off track or took you off track. And therefore, what is it that is missing and essential that you can put in place? So failure is truly a fast forward. And I've been operating in this way for a while now. And as a result, just understanding that, I chose a particular modus operandi, or I chose a particular way of taking this action, and it actually didn't deliver. I fell flat on my face with this. So much easier to actually declare that that's what's happened. Apply the unconditional acceptance process. Allow yourself to feel how you feel and keep going until there is no more words that are there to describe what you feel. And that's the point you go, okay, I unconditionally accept what is. Now, what happens is when something fails, we attach a meaning to it. So we don't look at the full picture of what's actually happened. And that's why the fast forward effect doesn't happen. We get caught up in the meaning that we've given it. And we start going the track of how are we going to justify, how are we going to, explain this. Well, actually, if you focus on the facts, there's no explanation required. There's no justification required. There's just stating the fact. I put this amount of money down, this amount of time, this amount of effort, and this is how I went about it. And it actually didn't deliver. And it allows you to be able to distill and discern what actually happened there. And rather than diving deeper and deeper and deeper into what went wrong, you're able to see, okay, if I was to look at what was missing and essential that I can put in place for myself this time, before I have another go, what would that be? Put it in place and then have another go. And you can create, so what it does is it allows you to manage a situation and keep moving forward. Extremely important right now. And even as we proceed with 2022 and beyond, the energetics of the planet are all about moving forward. So the way to leverage the fast forward fact about failure is to keep yourself very factual. Keep your finger on the pulse of the facts. I run a business collective, and we did a whole session this time on facts versus meaning. And I invited them to create, as I have done for myself, like my own collection of a catalog of meaning-making words, such as right, wrong, good, bad. They're all meaning-making words. And getting stuck in those meaning-making words, really they're regenerative. Meaning-making words are regenerative. They just regenerate more and more and more and more stuff, taking you away from the fact, and then you don't move forward, let alone fast forward. But what a failure does, without further ado, you can move forward, and it is fast forward. In all of these nuggets of wisdom and pearls of wisdom, I invite you to really look at the lay of the land. So here, when you're examining the facts, look at the lay of the land fully. My journey into weight loss has been something that I talk about a lot, the stop, start and all that. And the fast forward impact occurred when, it was this approach that enabled me to take on intermittent fasting. Because I could see, when I examined the facts, what was actually going on, what was causing the stop starts again and again and again. And how rich and enriching my mind would get, giving meaning to various times that I had failed in my various attempts. So once I dropped that, then okay, I have times when one day of cheat day becomes 3 weeks, and it doesn't become 3 months. My health parameters are better than they've ever been. And it's applying this particular fact about failure. The second one is it's activating. Failure is activating. Sure enough, we react. That in itself is an activation of sorts. the fact that it is activating, what that suggests is that there is, it generates an emotional reaction. It creates a mental engagement and focus. And even if the focus and mental engagement is on the negative aspect of failure, once you understand that this fact about failure, that it's activating, it literally activates all of your sensory organs. You can step out of the negativity that starts to pull you down and apply that activation to regrouping, energizing yourself, and applying that vibrant vitality and this additional life force that gets generated to exactly what it is that you wish to focus your attention on. It activates you to get back on the path, or it activates you to wallow and experience a train wreck. Either way, activation is taking place. But once you understand this fact about failure, you can actually turn it around and leverage it. Because the one thing it does is gives you complete clarity on what it is that you don't need to do anymore, who it is that you don't require to rely on anymore. It gives you, it's so clarifying. Should you choose to look at it that way? Like literally, it cuts out the noise. If something's failed, okay, fine. What are the various pieces that came together for that failure to occur? Which of those are still relevant? Which are the ones that you didn't quite, fully utilize? Which are the ones that are just going to drop off? What it's done for me when I've understood these facts about failure, it allows me to remain stationed in my center, in my own mastery. It gives me the ability to be able to look at what's really going on. The key thing about activating is it activates your sensory organs. Each sensory organ is a sensory organ, and sure enough, it has a function. But it also gives you a sense of what's actually going on. So given that these sensory organs are activated, you can utilize that to really get to see what's actually being shown to you, to really allow yourself that moment where you're not rushing around, but you can take a breath and discern what's actually being communicated. Yeah, I'm hearing this, but what's actually being communicated? Now, all of that requires you to literally very rapidly go through whatever it is that you need to go through to get to a point of unconditional acceptance. Because I know that when failure occurs, we are humans. When failure occurs, it does impact us. I get excited about it now because I know what I know and I've worked with it. So it's like, oh, failure, right. No need to go there. It allows me to literally look at the fullness of every element that came together. And I'm able to do it really fast. I don't need to take many days. And here's the other piece that happens. The activation part, what it's done for me is I know now it activates my sensory organs. I'm really able to sense in a project or in a particular intention that I hold, if it hasn't quite delivered, I'm able to very quickly, without any attachment, discern which are the ones, which it could be people, it could be resources that are necessary for me to still move forward, delivering this particular intention, and therefore they are to be kept aside, and those that no longer serve, that are to be released. Now, the key thing here is, and once I know that, I just get into action and I release whatever needs to be released. It could be people not being a part of the team, or certain resources being deployed elsewhere, but not in service of the intention that I've chosen. And because it is the activating vibe, it gets me into action really fast. But what happens is, when we delve into all the associated, regenerated spin of meaning attached to failure, then you're not able to see all of this. All you see is, trees, 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 trees. There's no separation between the wood from the trees. So the activating part is applied. I apply it to my sensory organs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to the fourth fact. The third fact is, a failure is invoking. What does it invoke? It invokes determined clarification. It clarifies, and then you make a choice and you become determined. So it clarifies for you all that does not serve. And just using, the whole project itself did not serve, is not clarifying. That's literally, you may be chopping off some essential organs of what is needed to actually deliver on what your intention is. Because it invokes that clarified determination, if you take on clarification and you actually engage with the full spectrum lay of the land in any situation that you call failure, that's why I call this 7 facts to get up close and personal with failure. This invoking part, it literally invokes creativity, innovation, precision, focus, because it clarifies the stuff that you don't need to go or utilize or do anymore. Now it's up to you then. You could get determined about, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, done. Wrap up, move forward. And you could get determined about, okay, I am moving forward, and I'm moving forward with vigilance and diligence and rigor, knowing that these are the pieces that are not going to be a part of my next step of moving forward. To me, what it did was it invoked a determination to continue to operate only from my resolve. And that gave birth to a very powerful pearl of wisdom called resolution. Solutions coming from resolve. That's what it invoked for me. If I'm engaged in finding a solution to anything, I'm going to have that come from my resolve. And I've taken on, my resolve is what I'm here to cause in this lifetime. Humans and humanity expecting and accepting miracles as their norm. Everything falls within that context. And sure enough, when I'm working on a particular project or I'm working on an aspect of that project, I still come from the project itself being a resolution. If I'm working on an aspect of it to, achieve a particular critical path, even that is a resolution. Even when I take on fixing certain things, even the approach I use to do that, I ensure that that is a resolution. So for me, what this failure part has done is it really gave me this clarity that the better I understand all aspects of that which came together for all the effort that was put in, that actually did not deliver the result. It's equally important, and equally important even to celebrate that understanding rather than brush it aside and move forward. Because there are hidden nuggets and gems and jewels in there. And it invokes my determination to realize my resolve. I'm several steps closer to seeing that come into fruition. But you're not at all, you don't make any progress if you don't get up close and personal with failure. Here's the other piece that I've done, and that's actually fact number 4, which is layered. There are many, many layers. When you start examining the lay of the land in the context of failure, it is layered. There are many layers to it. So I go into the layers. I go into, okay, this is the project. It had these resources. This was the plan. We were following the plan exactly. And, it just didn't deliver. Okay, didn't deliver. What are the different layers? There's the emotional dynamic. There's the physical aspect of whatever it is that was put in place. I use the full spectrum lens. Anytime I'm going into a lay of the land. Lay of the land is a very important technology, as you've heard me talk about that in so many pearls. Get really thorough about the lay of the land. The better you understand the lay of the land and all the layers that form it, that make that up, the easier it is to find that needle in this humongous haystack of lots of stuff. So it makes it easier for me to say, okay, I use the full spectrum lens of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and environmental, because I've chosen to have all aspects of my life coexist in whatever it is that I do. And I'm not afraid of taking the time to, if in the physical side, it's to do with the physical dynamic between two people in my team, I'm not afraid to go ahead and spend more time getting into the different layers of that dynamic. Because it is so much easier. Remember, failure is fast forward. That's the first thing to remember. If something has failed, this is your opportunity to fast forward what it is that was intended from what you were doing. So as you work through the other facts of failure, don't compromise. It is in this layering implementation, how I leverage this is this is where I bring in my sensory organs in quite a significant way. Okay, I saw this happened, but what is actually being shown to me there? Yeah, I heard these people talk about this. I hear that all of this stuff has been written about, talked about. What's actually being communicated there? It is so profound and it is so simple, but because we are so focused with the noise and the clutter that we don't hear it. Use the different layerings of your sensory organs. Every time there's a failure, that's why I get excited about failure now. Because to me, it's fast forward, realization of my resolve. Okay, this happened. We followed the strategy. I'm going to invoke the sensory organ of taste. So what is it that didn't taste good? And you will really see so clearly, invoking the sensory organ of touch, layers. And it's about the feeling. Okay, yeah, that was all visible. We actually could touch and feel that this seemed to be on track or this seemed to be off track. And, but if you allow yourself to feel into it, I mean, I do this a lot. I feel into failure. What's actually being shown to me? What's being revealed here? What is mine to do? And what are the yummy pieces that I can actually, I've been doing this body of work on wrap up. I can actually wrap up as a gift for us to tap into in the future. Have fun with it, understanding the layers at face value. I mean, what has happened when I've done this? I've realized that when I go into the layering that makes up any particular incident, failure in the negative connotation itself is a meaning word. What occurred has occurred. And okay, I've given the meaning to failure as, okay, this is that very special addition to my fuel that enables a fast forward. I'm able to look at all of this. The other piece that layering does, and invoking also does this, it takes away the rush energy. And if I look at myself before I went through my journeys of spiritual awakenings, failure equals I would get super rushed to compensate for it. And perhaps cause, a lot of damage and casualties along the way. But one of the things that failure invokes, should you choose to utilize the clarifying determination, is it invokes creativity by taking out the rush. And then when you go into the layering to really investigate the lay of the land and get up close and personal, with no rush, you're able to pick out those nuggets, those gems, the needle in the haystack, whatever it is that you choose to call, and be able to pull things together in a way that would not have been available to you were you rushing around. And often the rushing around is to find another solution very quickly to patch up. So you're now in the patch up mode, as opposed to fast forward to realizing your intention. And you very quickly get into the spin of fixing things, patching up, but they're all patches. You lose the strength of your foundation. The piece, when you work with the layered fact of failure, and invoke the sensory organ of your nose, the sense of smell. And we all know it because we've experienced it in different ways. There are some environments or some connections just don't smell right. And again, I know right and all of that is meaning word, but just there's a feeling you have about that, just from the smell that's there in the space. So what if you applied that to situations where failure had occurred? You will see that there would have been a point where you knew intuitively that this wasn't going to go anywhere. And you landed up spending far too much time because, and you will have your own becauses. And it may just be to save face, to, so that the team doesn't feel disappointed, so my family doesn't feel disappointed, that sort of stuff. But it didn't smell right. So when I work with the layered part, particularly, in my lay of the land analysis, I literally look at the different triggers, different, get very specific about what actually happened. Now that I've done this, over several years, when I got this collection of 7, I allowed myself to immerse in looking at some of the past failures that I had and applied each of these to those failures as well, just so that I could get the connection of, like connecting the dots experience. And that gave rise to something very specific as an understanding for me, which was my own strategy of, I thought it was ensuring that failure don't occur again, but it really was my strategy of dealing with failure, which was to get over busy with so many things that provided a really good, valid justification and reason, where it didn't make any sense to focus our attention on the thing that had failed. But really what was happening was I was slowing down the realization of my resolve. And in the past, it was okay. It was to do with particular businesses, and past is the past anyway. I was doing it so that I could connect the dots and arrive at this distillation. But going forward, my game is humans and humanity, expecting and accepting miracles as their norm. So getting over busy with stuff just because I don't want the attention to go on into something that I've failed at is really a mega slow down strategy. It's literally like putting the chains around the wheels. So this layering part, layered examination of your failures, bringing in all of your sensory organs, is a really important one. And remember, I'll talk about that more when I talk about the 5th fact. Your body is a perfect indicator. It's your partner in knowing what's actually occurring. So the 5th fact is uncompromising. So when I did my analysis, deep dive, 7 facts about failure, lay of the land analysis of my what I deemed as failures of the past, what I saw was that every time, long before something had failed, it was very evident it was not going to deliver. But by that time, there were too many stakes in the ground, too many stakeholders. And what I saw was I got embroiled in, I have to do this. I need to do this. I have all these families that get paid, that get fed because of the salaries I give. So it has to be done. It has to be done this way. because this other way is too uncertain. And so it goes. Didn't serve anybody, really, in the end. So what this particular fact of uncompromising about failure, when I did the lay of the land, and what I saw was, what was missing an essential. What is missing an essential in so many places for me was I just wasn't uncompromising. I would compromise thinking that I had to. I needed to. It was, it was disrespectful, or it was expected of me, or whatever, But in the end, you land up disappointing so many more people. And one failure regenerates itself, multiplies into so many more. Because with so many people being let down. So what I have done for myself, and I invite you to take this on, and I know it takes a while to really get bedded in, is become uncompromising about the need to, have to, should do, should not, must. What would you do if you didn't have to do it? What would you actually choose if there wasn't a should or should not? In this situation, what would you choose? What would get unleashed if you didn't need to act a certain way? And you acted because you chose to. What would get unleashed? So what was interesting for me, and I invite you to do this for yourself, is I literally went back and took some of the mega failures, and I found in the layered investigation, I found moments where it was the turning point, and I just chose the wrong end of the sliding door and kept going because of have to, need to, all that. And then ask these questions. What would I do in that moment if I didn't have to? And what would get unleashed if I release the need to do things a certain way? And I saw, and you will too, sure, I have a very powerful way of envisioning so I can see deeper than many people, but you don't have to be in that space. You yourself intellectually will be able to see what would have occurred and what difference can be made by learning from that. So in the uncompromising, and there'll be other things that you can choose. It also meant that I released compromise. I didn't need to compromise. There was no requirement to. There never was. I felt I needed to, and that's why I compromised. There is no need to compromise. I became so much more present. And that's a sixth fact I'm about to talk about. I became so much more present to being able to connect and communicate with people who in the past I would have strung along feeling that I had to do that. I was able to communicate at the point that communication was required to terminate certain actions that weren't going to get anywhere, which in the past I would have carried on. So again, my invitation to you would be uncompromising about leveraging the uncompromising fact of failure. Again, this is something you don't have to share with anyone, and you can if you want to. But, I would suggest do it after the fact. Because otherwise you will get engrossed in discussions about it. That learning in itself, it was so powerful. I got super excited about failure when I did this on just one incident or one situation in my life. And I got so much from that. And I thought, wow, what if I did it with others? I know there are some of you here in my business collective on this call. And one of the things I talk about is time segmentation. So there was a period of time where I was really going to leverage failure, up close and personal, fast forward realization of my intent. So I created a segment of time, which was the leveraging failure segment of time. I have to say, I didn't do it until I had actually implemented these on one big failure. When I saw the richness that emerged from it, I felt it was worthy of having a segment of time, at least 3 times each week. That segment was maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes on some days. Wasn't a long segment. So it's up to you. There's another piece, there's such a fear of failure that really does stop us in our track. So get uncompromising about failure itself as a negative thing. So getting up close and personal released that failure, that fear of failure. The release, becoming uncompromising about have to, need to, must do, basically meant there was a big chunk of keeping going or doing this, that, or the other. The super busyness approach that I had used in the past was often so that others won't see me as a failure. The fear of their judgment and evaluation. And I released that too. Realized that half the time people don't even notice. We make it mean so much more than it actually is. And when you start operating in the realm of fact, it's so easy to just share the fact. There's no justification required. If somebody questions, oh, what happened there? This happened there. That was it, done. When we are afraid of failure, we give so much meaning to it that we begin with a preamble. And the point is lost. So then there's more questioning about that. There's greater justification you go into. You then are not present in your presence. And the other person feels disconnected, so they probe even harder. This piece, literally, I invite you to take on, each week, just take on one thing, or each month, take on one thing. I did that on a monthly basis, right? This month, no have-tos. No have-tos. Another month, it was, the dialogue about it should be this way, should not be this way, it's going to drop. No, not using that. Choose it, work at your pace. And keep your finger on that pulse, the 6th fact. The 6th fact is, and remember, when I do these 7 pieces, I will say to you, follow it in the sequence, or you can actually go at it in any way you require. Leveraging failure, it is very helpful if you actually follow the sequence. Because by the time you get to the 6th one, which is request, you're actually in such a comfortable place that this failure gives you such clarity of what are the requests I'm supposed to make of whom. It releases you from the entrapment of you having to be the one that does everything. So this particular fact, how you leverage this is by really engaging with what requests am I to make of whom to realize my resolve. Having had all the learnings that I've had from having been up close and personal with failure or with this particular situation. Sometimes the request is of your loved ones, people who are close to you, who develop and already always listening of you, to just release that. Oh, you always do this. Ah, there you go again. When are you going to stop doing it? They do it out of love because they don't want you to feel disappointed. And that's great. We want your love, but just release. Attaching your opinion about how things might have occurred in the past. And you do it as a request and people accept it. Now, remember, when you make a request, people may accept or people may not accept. But because you're making a request, you don't take it personally either, because you know that they may or may not accept. Then you decide, how you're going to allow yourself to be impacted by that. But this fact, and remember, this isn't the magic of that arises from making requests of people to support you, to provide you exactly what you require based on what you've learned, what was missing and essential that you've discerned, propels you forward so much faster than you would have done if you said, okay, we're not going there, that's failed, it's done. We're not going to use that approach. We're going to continue pushing ahead with this way. You've actually shut out so many people and so many ways that you could have access to. But if you actually did what I'm saying you do, following these facts, you would already have discerned the nuggets, the insights, the connections, the resources that will continue to serve you regeneratively. And then when you make your lists of people that you're going to make requests to, including making a request of yourself sometimes, you're able to apply all of that to where you're moving forward. Now, with requests, first of all, know that they can be, it's up to the discernment of the person you're making the request of. They may accept and they may decline. You don't have to prepare for what if they decline. But what you may want to consider is if a particular request is on the critical path of what it is that you wish to cause or make happen, you may want to have multiple people that you may wish to make that request. Or you may want to use an approach, which I do, which is when I know that someone is really important to what requires to be done, I ask them that, okay, you are important. This is a request I have, and I accept that you don't accept it. What is it that you require that I can promise, which will enable you to be a part of this project? You then become co-creators of a resolution. Literally, life becomes one with ease, joy, and grace. It's the norm. And everybody's engaged and involved. Friction starts to disappear. Biggest cause and creator of friction is us shunning or running away from failure. By getting up close and personal, all the different elements of it become contributors. So the seventh fact about failure is enriching. This was an odd one for me because when I did my body of work on one of the significant, what I called as failures in the past, by the time you get to this seventh fact, you're already in an enriched place. This is literally pulling out the gems. You know, if you go straight into it, it'll still show up some things, but you may not see them as the treasures that they are. And really what I do here is my intention with using this one is in my distillation of that which has been enriching from what has occurred, I want that enriching part to become regenerative. And that's why being thorough with the previous facts is an important aspect of what I'm asking you to take on. And again, enriching is one of the facts where I invite you to really look at it in a full spectrum way, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and environmentally. What's enriching from this physically to me, to my company, to my home, to the environment? Physically, that I can touch, feel, and experience it for real, mentally, emotionally. Remember, we are now applying the power of the tool of acknowledgement. By you acknowledging everything in a full spectrum way that is enriching, that you have distilled, discerned, and learned from failure, the more precise you are, the better it is. You are literally enabling it to blossom and become regenerative, enabling you to expand in the way that you wish to. And enrichment itself becomes regenerative. And that's why I say, failure fast forwards us to realize and fulfill the intention that we choose to apply it to. Over to you, Catherine.
Okay, I'm taking a breath. Oh my goodness. That is like a bravo. I have to say, Mynoo, we've done almost a year of both these pearls of wisdom and these nuggets of wisdom. And this really gets a standing ovation. I think everyone would agree. Such huge ahas tonight, and this new vantage point on failure that allows us to just walk through the door, delivering on our intention while just cutting out all the noise. And I love that this gives us new reasons to celebrate failure and not put such a negative spin on it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I think we all can now find time to actually work with failure in a new way. I just know for myself, I have so many more dots to connect. And I love how you said looking back and from hindsight 2020, see why these failures occurred, what they're all about, without making it mean something. So yes, a whole new spin on it really is a learning. Everything is a learning. And I can't thank you enough, Mynoo. What a beautiful night. Thank you for all who are here. I know I'm going to be watching this over and over on Facebook because I have 14 pages of notes and I got about a quarter, I think, of what you said. So Thank you all. What a beautiful evening. I love it. Can't wait to hear more next Thursday. And we will just look forward to continuing our journey with the 108 Pearls of Wisdom. And every once in a while, we'll get this nugget thrown in. So thank you all. Appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.